Welcome you all, dear students. Today we are going to talk about how to draw the labels of the anatomical landmarks for the first lower permanent molar. We can actually see the tooth from 5 perspective aspects, and we have to put that in mind, how to see the tooth and from what perspective. We can see it from buccal and lingual, mesial, and distal. We can see actually the occlusal outline as well. Now, from the buccal aspect, we can see 3 cusps that are the mesiobuccal, distobuccal, and the one located at the line angle, which is the distal cusp. We can also see both lingual cusps from this aspect, and that's because of 2 important reasons that are the lingual convergency and because they are appearing longer, and that makes them appear from this aspect as well. So from the buccal aspect we can see 5 cusps. Now the cervical line is a straight or flat cervical line, but it has very little curvature that is making it convex root-wise, as all teeth have the cervical line of the same shape but with little different curvature. So here it appears with a little curvature towards the crown, towards the root. Again, we have elevations and depressions appearing on the surface. We have the cervical ridge, which is appearing at the cervical 1/3 running horizontally, and 2 developmental depressions between buccal cusps that are mesiobuccal developmental groove between mesiobuccal and distobuccal cusps, and distobuccal developmental groove between distal and distobuccal cusps. For the root, it has 2 roots. This tooth have 2 roots that are the medial root and distal roots. In between them there is an undivided portion of the root which is named the root trunk, with a little developmental depression over. Now let's move to the next aspect, which is the lingual aspect. At the lingual aspect we can see both lingual cusps, and that's very logical because they are longer, so they can mask both buccal cusps from this aspect. But we can see the cusp which is present at the line angle, which is the distal cusp. So from the lingual aspect we can see only 2 lingual cusps and 1 cusp found at the line angle. We have an important thing here, that is the more occlusally present cervical line with a cervical lipping at the middle. And because these tooth have lingual convergency and have the more occlusally placed cervical line, this makes the root trunk of this tooth appear from the lingual aspect as longer than the buccal view. So why it actually appears longer? Why this part of the root, which is the root trunk, appears longer? That's because it has lingual convergency and the more cervically located cervical line, so it may appear longer and narrower. Now, when we talk about the mesial aspect, we can see 2 maximum convexities at 2 different levels. The buccal located cervically at the cervical 1/3, while the lingual at the middle. We can also see that the tooth from this aspect have lingual inclination, and it appears from the intercuspal distance like you see. The outline after being drawn, we can see that at the junction between both buccal and lingual cusps we can put down or draw the mesial marginal ridge, and just beneath it we can add or mark the mesial contact area. Cervical line would be like a slanting line with a higher level lingually, so it would appear as a slanting line. From this aspect the root is having just a deep developmental depression located over the whole root. From the distal aspect we can see as follows. Both maximum convexities are not at the same level like we did at the mesial, but here we can see all the buccally located cusps. So the mesiobuccal cusp would mark the outline, and the shorter with 1 millimeter distobuccal cusp would be drawn just beneath it, and at the end we can mark the distal cusp. So again, we draw the mesiobuccal is already drawn as the outline of the surface. After that, we draw the distobuccal, which is located 1 millimeter shorter than the mesiobuccal. At the end, we mark the distal cusp because it's located at the line angle between buccal and distal surfaces, so it should be seen from this aspect as well. But we don't mark any about the lingual cusps of the distal aspect because we only see the distolingual. We don't see the mediolingual because it's shorter with 1 millimeter. So from the distal aspect, we can see 4 cusps that are 3 cusps, main cusps, and 1 at the line angle that are the mesiobuccal, distobuccal, distal, and the distolingual cusp. Now we mark the cervical line the same as it's done over the medial aspect. Finally, we draw, or we can see from this aspect, both roots. So we can draw the root, and it's drawn inside the outline of the medial root. We can also see that we have a little developmental depression over the surface of the distal root as well. Let's move to the occlusal surface. Here we can see the hexagonal of the occlusal aspect, and all we have to draw is the lines from the differences or dividing all cusps from each other. As you can see, these lines are directed toward the center of the occlusal surface. So a line separating mesiobuccal and distobuccal cusps, a line separating distobuccal and distal cusps, and finally a line separating both lingual cusps. Now we draw the orientation of each cusp. Each cusp should be looking forward except for the distal, which is located towards the center of the occlusal surface. So again, all the cusps are looking forward except for the distal looking towards the center. At the center we can see the central fossa, and the central developmental groove is giving an inverted W shape or zigzag, and it should be looking like this. At the ends of the central developmental groove we can see 2 supplemental grooves that are marking the triangular fossae as well as the marginal ridge to separate it from the outline. So this is mesiobuccal cusp, this is distobuccal cusp, and here at the line angle is the distal cusp. We can also see mesiolingual and distolingual cusps as well. Not just that, we can mark the distal marginal ridge and the supplemental grooves marking the distal triangular fossa. Here we can draw it. This is the distal triangular fossa. The other side is this is the medial marginal ridge and the medial triangular fossa. Now we have also developmental depressions separating the cusps from each other. This is the central developmental groove, and it looks like an inverted W shape, as well as the grooves separating mesiobuccal and distobuccal cusp, which is the mesiobuccal developmental groove, distobuccal developmental groove separating distobuccal and distal cusps, and finally the lingual developmental groove separating both lingual cusps from each other. Thank you so much for listening.